Hi, in this course we will look at Altium Designer's database libraries. It will be done by installing a library prepared with thousands of passive components, all provided in the course material. And I promise you, not spending hours creating resistors over and over again will not only speed up your next design, it will allow you to focus on the fun parts of electronics. A database library is a set of information and communication channels working together to give the designer a library of components for disposal during the design of the electronics. A database housing components and making them available in Altium for designs are wanted for its centralized way of working. It can minimize the risk of duplicated work, increasing the chance of sharing, and hopefully increasing the quality of the design. A database is a set of data structured in a way making it easy to manage. It can be created and managed in a multitude of ways. The database used in this course is created using Microsoft Excel and housed in a .xls file. In that way, we implement an offline solution for our Altium database library. The database contains dedicated entries and parameters for each component. All entries and parameters will later be mapped in a .dblib file in Altium. The .dblib file is the linkage between the database and the components in Altium, mapping all database entries with all of its data to components in Altium. An Excel file where each column is a parameter and each row is a component is used. All parameters must not have values, and not all parameters must be mapped to the Altium library. However, there are two parameters that must be present for a component to exist. The library ref, pointing at the schematical symbol to be used with a component, and the footprint ref, pointing at the footprint to be used for the component. Let's now have a look at the Excel file used as a database. The Excel file is the database, and as the name implies, this file holds the data used as a base for all the components. Each sheet in the Excel file can be handled like a sublibrary within Altium. Not all of them have to be used though. Just like the first in the provided database, it is only used for conveying information to the database user. Then there are two other sheets, one for European symbols and one with American symbols. We will now have a look at the European one. It consists of a table where each row corresponds to an individual component, and all columns specify some type of value or parameter for that specific component. If we look at the table that is provided, we can see here that we have a database ID, and this will be used to give a specific identifier to each component later on in Altium. If we take the first one as an example, we can see that there are two parameters here, manufacturer and MPN, which lack a value, and this is not a problem. You do not have to fill in all of the parameters. We can then see in description that this is a capacitor, an aluminium electrolytic one, and there are some specifications here. Go further, we can see that this component belongs to a product category, the capacitor aluminium electrolytics. We can see some values, some tolerances, some DC ratings of the component. We also can specify here different types of dimensions for the package. Lastly, we have the library reference. The library reference points out what schematical symbol that is used for this component, and the footprint reference, which points out what footprint is used for this specific component. That is the basic information contained within the Excel database that we will use for our Altium library. To use the database library in Altium, it must first be configured and then installed. And the first step in doing so is to have a good understanding of where all of the content related to this library is located on your computer. When that is done or known, one can go into Altium and press File and Open and navigate to the .dblib file and open it. We now have a view over the information contained within the .dblib file, and we will now configure this to be connected to our Microsoft Excel database file so it can later be used for Altium to create our libraries. The first thing that we will do is to specify or select the database type that we're working with. And we know that we have Microsoft Excel, so we will select that. We now have to specify the path to the database file used, so we will press Browse. We will view all files and we will select our Microsoft Excel database file and open. We will now connect to this database by pressing Connect. And we succeeded since we got some additional information here. We can see in the top left corner that we have some tables, each one corresponding to an individual sheet within the Microsoft Excel database file. The table information is not a sub-library for Altium. It is only used to convey information for the user of the database itself. So we will not include this, so we won't enable it. The other two is the one with European style symbols, and the other one is for the American style symbols. Let's select the European style first. We now have to do some configuration. We will specify a single key lookup where the database field is the database ID, which is a unique identifier for each component within our database. When that is selected, additional information gets presented below. And we can see here we have the footprint reference and the library reference. The first one pointing out which footprint to use for each component, while the other points out what symbol to use. And for Altium to later on, or for Altium to find these footprints and symbols, we must specify where Altium should look. And that is done by pressing the Options button here. And this pop-up window will appear, and we will select tab Symbols and Model Search Paths. And we will here open up, navigate to Footprints and select it. And we will add that. And we will do the same for our symbols. Add. OK. We will now go to the American Style Symbols table, and we will do the same for the single key lookup and select database ID. And just to verify, press Options here, the tab Symbols and Model Search Paths, and we can see that we have both the footprint and symbol specified. So okay, we can now save this file because it's now ready to be used in order to create our Altium libraries. It is now connected with the Microsoft Excel database. So how would one go about installing this library? It can be done in multiple ways. One way, which is valid for Altium 22 at least, is to go up to the top right corner to System or Set up System Preferences. Inside here, we will navigate to Data Management and select File-Based Libraries. Here, we will install from a file, and we will install a library from a file, which is our .dblib file, which we just configured. And we will open it, and we will make sure that it is activated, and we will press OK. And in order for us to verify that our library is now installed, we will go to File, New, and New Schematic. And we will look at the Components panel. If the Components panel is not opened, one can just press Panels and select Components. In the Components panel, in the top, we can see that we have two sub-libraries, one with European-style components and one with American-style components. We will use the European one. Below, we can see all of the components in this library. We have one selected. We can see the data present for the different parameters in the library. We can see the symbol used and the footprint. We can now try to place this capacitor in the schematic, and we succeeded. The library is now installed. We will now have a look at how to add a new component to our database library. We will have to add some information in our Microsoft Excel database. We need to prepare a symbol and a footprint and place them in the right directory. And then we will need to update our library within Altium, and then we will see if we can actually use our new component. For this, I have created a symbol and a footprint. We can start off by looking at the symbol. So here is the symbol that we will use, and we will now look at the footprint, and it's over here. If we go back to our .dblib file, which is the file linking our database to our Altium library, we did specify here. If we go here and look under Options, in this pop-up window, we will look at this Symbol and Model Search Paths tab. And here we have specified search paths for Altium for our footprints and our symbols. And for Altium to later on find the new footprint and symbol which we just viewed, we have to place them in these directories. We can mark one and we can see what the search path is. So we will do that. We will make sure that in our footprints, we will find the example footprint, which we have here. And under symbols, we have the same. So they are present there. Great. We now need to add some additional information in our database. So we will open up our Microsoft Excel database, and let's use the European style sub-library. We will now add a new row and entry in this database, which will correspond to a new individual component. And I will just go to the bottom of this table, and I will increase it by 1. We can now see that we have a new database ID, and this is unique for our new component. We can put in some description. This is an example component. We will skip all of these values. We do not need them for this purpose. But now we get to the library reference and the footprint reference. And here we need to specify or put in information which allows Altium's library to know what symbol and what footprint is used for this specific component. The library reference refers to the symbol that's going to be used. And now we need to know what to put in here. And it is not the file name of our symbol. Now we'll show you. If we go to our symbol, this is the file name, example symbol.schematiclib. The name that we need to put in our database is the design item ID within this file. You could have multiple ones inside here, but we just have one for this example. So this is the name that we actually need to put in our database. So we will copy that and we will place it here. Done. We will do the same for the footprint. However, the naming convention is not the same. If we go to our footprint, we will not use the file name, but the name that we find here. So it's the name of the actual footprint inside this file. And it is footprint-name. So we go here, put it here, and we will save. We have now created a new entry, a new row, which would correspond to a new component. It has a database ID. We have some example description here. We did not input anything else. We have the symbol that we're going to use and the footprint. So when this is saved, we can go back to Altium. We will look in the schematic. We will see in the component panel that we have selected the European style components. You can right click inside here and press refresh. Let's go to the bottom and we can now see that we have an example component here. We can place it, and here we have our symbol. One could also see that both the symbol and the footprint is actually found. So let's give this a designator. So let's do it like this, and we will try to find a property panel, see if it comes up. So we will just try to give this an designator. So we will mark it. We will give it a designator of example component 1, E1. We'll save this, and we will now see if we could manage to get the footprint into our PCB. So while inside the PCB, we will import changes from our schematic. But this is not correct. Yes, this is correct. I will not add component class members or room, but we can see here that we have a component that could be added. So we will validate changes. Looks like it will be okay. We will execute a change, close, and we now have our footprint inside a PCB. So that's how to add a component to our Altium database library.